Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person, and today I want to talk to you about the Pokemon trading card game, specifically the one for the Game Boy Color. Some little fun facts and stuff up front here. Actually, for the longest time, I was actually under this weird impression for whatever reason, despite being a gigantic Pokemon fan when it came out, like any good 90s kid was. I somehow got it in my head that the trading cards were, like these. I had this whole book full of glare of just tons of Pokemon cards, collectible cards. Basically, these are just collectible cards from the show. They don't even all fit in this binder, so I don't know why they gave you this. I don't know why Bulbasaur has a yellow binder. I don't know why I drew all the hell over it. But I thought those cards were, trading cards. Because all you could really do is get them and trade them, and they had the artwork from the show, and they tell, when they first appeared in the show and that kind of stuff. They really were just made for the show. They were by Topps, I think, made them or something. But for some reason, for the longest time, like way too long, I was wrong about that. And actually, the trading cards are these things. And I thought these were fighting cards because you would battle with them. I didn't pick the greatest setup for the shot. It's very glary in here. But you would battle with these cards because you would put energy cards on them and stuff, whatever. We'll get into how you actually play the game, but there was actually a game with this, and this is officially called the Pokemon Trading Card Game. So these were cards that you're meant to not only, collect and trade, but also there was a whole game around it. You'd have the whole setup with, there was a coin to flip, there was a mat to lay down, and you had the cards, and you had the damage counters. It was a whole tabletop experience. But I didn't really play it that much because I do have a box of cards now, but I never really had enough to really have like a decent deck build. Let alone did we have enough to really have multiple decks. So my brother and I actually were into this so much that we actually made our own Pokemon cards. I had a bunch of these little leftover business card things or whatever, and we just kind of made up our own Pokemon and turned them into Pokemon cards like this. And they were terrible because we're not great artists and we don't know anything about balancing in these games. But it was a fun thing to do. We even taped them all around, so it was like they were laminated. What I'm trying to say is I was very into Pokemon, and it's also very embarrassing that I thought these are trading cards and these are fighting cards. But obviously these are the trading card games and these are just collectible cards. I guess you can technically trade them, but they're not the official trading cards of the game about Pokemon. Anyways, all this is a long way to say that I actually got the game on Game Boy, the Pokemon trading card game. Actually, to be fair, it's also actually a Game Boy Other game in the sense that it came out when the Game Boy Color was out, but it's a black cartridge game, so you can play an original Game Boy. All I can find online is that it says some features aren't available there. I assume they just mean color. Maybe there's something else, but I don't know about it. And also, I haven't really done anything with Game Link or Infrared or anything with multiple people. I've only played the game solo. So just know that going into the review. And always there's a written thing in the description, probably, if you can look at that. But I can't really talk about the Pokemon trading card game as the game without really telling you, the Game Boy game, without telling you first about the actual just general basics of how to play the game, and the game will show you that as well. There's probably going to be a lot of the footage. I've played this originally on my Game Boy Color. I've played it on the 3DS. Actually, this is what I played through it on for this particular instance. I just can't believe I haven't reviewed it yet because I've played it so many times over the years. And I've also played a little bit of it on Switch, which is where you'll see the footage from Nintendo Switch Online. So let's just get into how you actually play this game and then get into what the game is. So, the Pokemon trading card game is basically what you do is you have a deck full of 60 cards. The written review will have this probably a bit more detail than I'm putting here. But basically, you have a deck full of cards, and you start off. You have a few of those cards you pull off to the side for prizes, and then you will you'll draw cards into your hand. And flip a coin, see who goes first. And then the idea is you're placing basic Pokemon onto your you put one onto your active slot, and then you have 5 bench slots to put bench Pokemon. These have to be basic Pokemon, so essentially they're like unevolved ones that you can put here. A Pokemon can't be evolved until a turn after it's been played. So you do that, and then you start and draw cards. There are basically 3 types of cards you can have in your hand. There are Pokemon cards, like I mentioned, basic Pokemon cards that can be laid down in the active slot or on the bench. Then there's Stage 1 Pokemon cards, which evolve the basic Pokemon up in evolution. They require the right basic Pokemon to evolve into that. And then Stage 2, which is basically the same thing, but with the appropriate Stage 1 card that you have to evolve from. That's how that works. So nothing can be evolved on the first turn that it exists. There are also energy cards, which are attached to your Pokemon, and you use this to try and get basically an energy requirement. Some require specific energies, some require, any energy, some will require a mixture of energies, but there's certain costs for doing their moves, and their moves can have a variety of things for their attacks. They might do damage, they may have effects like paralysis, poison, confusion, and there's ways those are implemented into the gameplay as well with things like coin flips and damage over time and whatnot. There's also a Pokemon power that can be used. Usually these are passive abilities that can just kind of be done as not part of your turn, really. I mean, this is part of your turn, but it doesn't end your turn to do them. Attack will end your turn. Either attacking or selecting, just to pass or whatever to end your turn ends your turn. Pokemon powers usually can't be used if you have a status effect on you, if you're like asleep or paralyzed or whatever. So, like I say, when you're doing attacks, you do damage to Pokemon, and that can basically it puts damage counters on them. Their HP is shown by these little like open circles, usually. In the actual game here, but like otherwise in the tabletop one, you just have damage counters. Their HP is usually divisible by 10. Every damage counter is 10 HP. If your attack does more damage than there is HP left on the Pokemon, then they're knocked out. You could select one of the prizes. Whenever you get all the prizes, that's when you win. Or if there's no more active Pokemon or bench Pokemon to switch into the active slot when someone gets knocked out, then you also win. Or whoever runs out of cards first loses. There's a few different ways to win the battle. The third type of cards, before I get too far away from that, are trainer cards. And these can do a variety of things. Some of them, they can heal your Pokemon or cure status effects. They can, give you nice boosts, help you draw more cards and do things with your own deck and discard pile in hand. Or they can do things to your opponent's Pokemon or cards as well. So they're kind of meant to kind of switch things up here. That's where some more of the strategy is. And so there's a lot of ins and outs with all these little things. Also a thing here to realize that there are type effectiveness and resistances. These are 2 things that are important to keep in mind. So type effectiveness here, essentially, every Pokemon, whatever type that Pokemon is, that's what type their attack will be. And if you're so if you have like a weakness, I guess weakness and resistances is what I should say. So if you're weak to a certain type, a Pokemon of that type attacking you will do twice as much damage. And resistances are similar. If you resist a certain type, a Pokemon of that type attacking you, you'll actually do 30 less damage. So that's how the weaknesses and resistances work. There's also a retreat cost here because you can pull your Pokemon back, but the retreat cost is how many energies you'll need to discard from that Pokemon to put it onto your bench. It'll keep all of its damage counters and everything, but you can take it out of play so it doesn't get knocked down. That's really the basic gist of playing it, is trying to build a strategy where you can take out your opponent's Pokemon and win all of your prizes first before the opponent does. That's the main goal of the game. Now, as far as the video game, they add on to this gameplay a bit more. They start you off with a starter deck. I mean, before you do anything, you get to do a little tutorial to learn how to play. But then they let you pick a starter deck. So basically, there's a Bulbasaur and friends, Squirtle and friends, Charmander and friends. Essentially, you're picking what you want your deck to predominantly be. But there is a little bit of mix. It's not just, grass, water, fire. There are also some other things thrown in there. And basically, the idea is to give you a starter deck to have some ability to succeed and progress through the game moving forward. and then there's a few people to battle in the first area, but then after that it really opens up, and you can select around on this overworld map to go to these different clubs. They're themed clubs where, you know, there are things like the Fighting Club, Rock Club, Water Club, Fire Club. You get the idea. There's 8 clubs that you need to beat, kind of similar to the core series games, you know, Red and Blue, because you want to beat these clubs. Beating the club master will get you a master medal, and you want to get the 8 master medals so that you can attempt fighting the Grandmasters, which is basically this game's version of the Elite Four. So you fight them in a, you know, one after the other kind of style of fighting, and ultimately you want to do that so you can inherit the legendary cards. That's the premise. It's the plot. As you're defeating other players throughout this, they will give you booster packs as rewards, and so they'll just have a bunch of, you know, cards in there. And then this is how you get more cards, how you collect them, and how you can use them to change your deck or to build an entirely new deck. There's also these deck machines. You can use them to save some custom-made decks that you made yourself if you want to keep them there for later, because every deck that you make in your set of... You can have multiple decks on you at a time, but every deck that you make occupies all of those cards, so you can't, you know, use the card in one deck and also another deck unless you have enough extra ones to put in that other deck. You can't, you know, if I only have, you know, one Bulbasaur card, I can't have multiple decks of Bulbasaur at the same time. That kind of thing. So that's where you'd want to save some and maybe rebuild them later. There's also, as you get those master medals, you can put those into these deck machines to unlock more pre-made decks that, if you have enough cards, they will just make those pre-built decks for you. To give you a bit of a, you know, if you want, you know, don't want to make your own, but you want to have something different, these are some options for you. Also, some people want to trade cards as you're going through, and there's some random people in the little lobby areas of all of these places where you can fight them to get some cards. You have a rival you fight a few times. So there's a little bit of that going on, but again, there's not a lot of plot. It's mostly just going to every club and fighting everyone. And essentially beating everyone in the game is when you beat the game, with the only other goal really to be, I guess, to try and collect every card that there is, if you're into that. But I think there's actually a bug in the game that doesn't allow that to happen at this point in time, so depending on where you play, it might not even be possible. But so for the positives on this, I think this is a really, I mean, it's a really fun strategy game, and just in general. It was a neat tabletop game, and adapting it into this format, I think, was a really good combination of things. For one thing, it's nice that you can just fight whoever you want. You have all these different opponents you can take on at any time. You don't have to physically go out, like, in the real world and find people to play against and have the time to do that. You don't have to deal with all the setup and the cleanup and the rules and how everything works. The game takes care of all of the dirty work, so you save a lot of time. You get a lot more out of it for someone just looking to have their fix of playing Pokemon trading card game, you know? And also, while the game might be, you know, depending on where you get it, could be maybe a bit expensive, it's probably still going to be cheaper than buying all of these different packs of Pokemon cards like you would just get in the game. I think there's only like 226, or there might be extra ones, it might be 228, I don't know. There's a certain number of cards that are like in the game total, and it's maybe not like as much as you get, you know, in the real game, but you still get quite a few cards available to you just for the price of admission. I like there's a flow to it. Also, the idea that you slowly get cards to fill into your deck, to change your deck, to build your own decks, and making your own strategy and trying things out is really the heart of this game. And I think that that's really good, because you don't just rely on just, you know, type effectiveness. You can also rely on things like, oh, well, what is an interesting way to, like, build my deck to mess with the other person's deck, or make my deck work really well, really quickly, or really interestingly. You know, there's a lot of room for experimentation there. And pairing that with the pseudo-narrative idea of, like, well, it's not just doing a bunch of, you know, it's not a battle simulator. It's also, you know, you're trying to beat all these different people so that you can, you know, work towards the goal of beating the Grandmasters and winning the game. There's, like, an actual conclusion to it, so it feels like you're kind of getting experience, so you're not just playing this until you're bored. you play this until you beat it, and then you're like, cool, and then you put it down and you can play it again some other time, like I've done multiple times over the years. I think marrying some of these ideas together to make it likens to the core series, to take the real world trading card game and put it into a video game format, and to make it all kind of meld back together into something that is a little more digestible for a lot of the gamer fans, a lot of people who really like Gen 1, especially those like Pokemon Red and Blue. I think this will be very good for them. It's got some catchy tunes in it. Not a lot of tunes, but some catchy ones. But the downsides here are that, like, there's no RPG element. So again, if you are a big fan of the core series games of Red and Blue, you might look at this and go, whoa, I'm not really like getting stronger or anything. I'm getting more cards and stuff, but like it's all about strategy. So like, if you wanted that element of more story, more RPG progression, or any of the adventuring, because there's kind of like selecting places on a map, you're not going to get that here. It is really more about the deck battling and building aspect. Even the collection part is kind of downplayed. There's not really much of a reward to get everything in the game other than to say you did it. So, in that sense, I think you might be a little bit like, whatever. Also, types can be a little weird here. I think, like, for example, in the core series, there's a bunch of types, right? In the main games, you have all these different types. And here, some of those types have kind of just been, like, condensed. So, for example, fighting type, rock type, and ground type Pokemon are all just fighting in this game. And so that can be a little confusing for some of the type effectiveness of things, as well as the idea of for resistances. Like, some of the resistances make sense, right? Like the grass or the ground and rock types are weak to grass moves, whereas the fighting types are weak to psychic moves. But also then when you look at the moves, I guess since you have to remember that the Pokemon dictates the type of the move, you might look at this move and say, oh, that's not going to be effective. It's like, oh, wait, it doesn't matter because it's not about the type of the move, it's the type of the Pokemon. And so, like, in a way, while it simplifies some of that stuff, it's just kind of a weird learning curve to jump from one to the other, to remember, okay, this is how this game works. And I'm trying to play by this game's rules, not just all the prior knowledge I have of Pokemon stuff. So some of that goes out the window a little bit, and that might be a little disappointing for core series fans. I also think what's probably the biggest issue with this game, probably because it's based on it's based on an actual tabletop game, is the fact that you're relying on RNG a lot. You need to get lucky draws to get the stuff that you need out of your deck. I mean, you need to get lucky on your coin flips to get stuff to work. There's just a lot of like happenstance stuff that it's like, well, like, if this happens, this is good, and you can try your best to minimize, the amount of RNG bullshit, but there's no way to totally get rid of it. So that's kind of frustrating, especially when you can sit here and just fight the same deck over and over, the same two decks going head to head, and sometimes you'll win it and sometimes you'll lose it, and it feels like it's not even necessarily that much about strategy or how good the deck is, how well you played. It's just about how lucky you got that time around. That can be kind of frustrating. I also think the end gauntlet is maybe a little much for the Grandmasters, to do multiple battles in a row. I guess if you have enough cards by then, you should be able to build multiple decks, because they allow you to swap in between duels, so you can like change and make a deck that counters each Grandmaster, I guess. But that's a lot of cards to be able to counter all of them, to have all those decks on hand, versus like the other option is to have one deck to try and beat all of them, which is also hard because now you need a kind of a catch-all deck with enough luck for that deck to win that many times in a row. And luck is not usually on your side that often, that consistently. So that can be kind of a rough thing, for sure. I think ultimately what I'm getting at for a lot of this, though, now the Pokemon trading card game is really good. I think that this is the kind of game that's going to appeal a lot to big fans of Gen 1 of Pokemon, or people who, really liked the old Pokemon card game. It's not going to have any newer cards than when this came out. Obviously, it's not getting updates or anything. But if you like the idea of the depth of strategy here, if you like the idea of playing the Pokemon trading card game when you don't have people around to play it with, it's a really great solo experience. And I think that I don't know. I think it does a lot to just be a really fun thing to play. Play through it, and then after a few years, like I got the itch. I'll play through that again. I don't feel like I need to go collect a bunch of actual cards or anything, but I can still just do this and enjoy what this game is without having to go through all the hassle of all of the buying and opening and finding people to play with and all the other bells and whistles. And if you're into that kind of stuff, anyways, then this won't really substitute for the real deal because you're not getting the same kind of like I'm playing with people. In front of me and that kind of thing. Obviously, you're not getting this. It is for a solo experience where people who don't have access to others to play the game with that often. I think this is really great for that still. The only other issue is that it is a little harder to come by now. The 3DS version is obviously off the table because the eShop is closed. You might still be able to find a working cartridge of the original game, but I don't know what the prices are like right now, or the availability, or how well the batteries are holding up in those. I have no idea. I don't even know where my cartridge went, so that's also weird. But it is on Nintendo Switch Online at least, so you do have some access to it if you have a Switch. There's that. It's just part of your service, so it's it's on the regular Game Boy thing, so you should be fine if you want to play it there. Why not? If you're already subscribed, why not? You already have it, right? You already have the access, so I do think it's worth checking out. And as another little bonus thing here, because I'm hoping to post these the same day around the same time, so you can just kind of go here. I don't know if I'll have the link in the description or not, but I've also reviewed the Pokemon TCG Pocket, the mobile game that came out based on this game, which took a long time to get another game based on this. There's like a Japan sequel that I think got fan localized and stuff, but I've never played that, and there's been like the computer stuff and whatever. But this is the first time I think we've seen a really big widespread like, hey, this is a big hitter. We're going to tell everybody that Pokemon trading card game has another thing, and that's free to play. So if you're interested in how that works and how it's different from this and how it's similar to this and whatever, you can check out that review also. But I don't know. I guess I don't really know necessarily what else to ask you guys. So if there's anything you just want to share about Pokemon, obviously Pokemon's a big part of a lot of our lives. Even if I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan that I used to be, I still really like, especially Gen 1. I still appreciate a lot of stuff Pokemon has to offer. I think this is a really good side series. And really cool that they were able to take the video games and turn them into this really fun card game that is about not only just collecting cards, but also playing with them. Unlike these things that I still like these a lot because I like the show, but I never did get all those either. So I don't know if you want to talk about card collecting or deck building or playing the game or just some old school Pokemon stuff. The comments are open. I'm around decently a lot, so that could be fun to talk about. But I think that's about it for now. You can check out our other review if you want, and I don't know. It was a neat trip down memory lane. Sorry I didn't have a Pokemon hat, so I don't have a hat. So my hair, what's left of it, is looking the way that it is this morning. But that's I think that is good. I'll see you in the next one.